What is up, everyone, and welcome to some more F1 23 My Team Career Mode. We are here for round 16 of season 4 of our Jaguar Racing career, and we are going to be at the Singapore Grand Prix. Last time out, we were at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, and after a very difficult qualifying where we qualified only 14th, we managed to make our way all the way up the order to 3rd, and we got a podium, and we retook the lead of the Drivers' Championship once again. So we're currently sat 3 points ahead of Lando Norris at the top of the table, and I am hoping that we are going to have another strong race here in Singapore to hopefully continue to extend that lead. Obviously, you may remember back to, I believe it was season 2, where we had a very strong qualifying here in Singapore. I think we got pole position, or if we didn't, we were certainly leading for the majority of the race, and then unfortunately our car broke down about 2/3 of the way through the race. So I'm hoping that we can make up for that race at some point. Last season we weren't quite able to do it. I think we came about 7th or 8th here, if I remember correctly. And now I am hoping that we will be able to get that coveted win here in Singapore. If we do, we will become the first driver this season to win 5 races. I think we're the only driver to win 4 races so far this season, if I remember correctly as well. Honestly, when you've done 15 races in a season, it's a little bit difficult to remember who's won all of them. But I know that I've certainly won 4. So I'm hoping that we will be able to get at least 1 or 2 more before the end of the season, a handful more podiums, and generally just some strong results to close out the season, hopefully as the Drivers' World Champion. You know, we've yet to be really involved in a championship fight. How amazing would it be if we could win the World Championship in our first time that we've really been involved in a championship fight? But there's a long way to go before then. We've still got, what, 8 race weekends, including this one, left to get through. So there's a lot of points still up for grabs, and we need to not get complacent before the job is done. And, well, here's a good reason why we shouldn't be getting complacent, because it could very easily slip through our fingers. We're not even in the top 14 here in practice, despite the fact that I did do a soft compound run in practice as well. So that is perhaps slightly concerning to see that our pace seems to be nowhere near any of the other cars. But anyway, let's not dwell on that one too much. Let's just hope that we can fix the pace issues in time for qualifying. I was doing fairly consistent laps throughout the duration of the practice session, so I'm hoping that I will be able to, even if I don't get an amazing qualifying, I will still be able to get a pretty strong race. Quali-wise, I reckon that the aim has to be sort of top 5, that kind of thing. Make sure I'm not too far adrift of my closest championship rivals, which of course the closest is Lando Norris, but we also do have to be aware of threats from some other drivers. Piastri, Perez, maybe the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc even is an outside chance, I would say. So we just have to do everything we can to make sure that we can be as close to those guys, if not ahead of them. Obviously the dream is to be ahead of them, but I think that might not be completely realistic for this circuit. So we do a 1:28.8 to kick off the session, and initially I thought that that might have been a good time, but quite quickly I realised it wasn't going to be when I found myself all the way down in P15 at the end of Q1 here. So we went out again on another fresh set of soft compound tyres, but I didn't really improve my run very much. We only improved by less than 1/10 of a second, and that was only good enough to see us through Q2 in P14. So we're going to need a much better performance in Q2 if we're going to have any hope of making it through to Q3. Down all the way down in P14, there we are. Kevin Magnussen in P9. We were outperformed by Logan Sargent in the Haas, which is incredibly disappointing, and Charles Leclerc right on the bubble there. He was only a couple hundredths of a second away from being knocked out. But as it stands, it is Joe, Tsunoda, Fittipaldi, Lawson, De Vries and Stroll who are out, and I really wouldn't say any of those people are a particularly surprising loss. Both Haas's making it through. The Haas has seemed to be a little bit stronger than those other 3 teams this season, but generally speaking, they're still not really in the realm of being able to score points on a consistent basis. I think only 1 or 2 times this season have they been able to pick up points. Generally, it's the other 7 teams who are in the point scoring territory. So we do a 1:28.7 to kick things off this time. That's about where our fastest lap in the previous session was, but of course that was on a fresh set of soft compound tyres, and this was a used set, so there is a lot of time to make up on this occasion, and we are 4/10 up coming into the final sector of our second flying lap on a fresh set of soft compound tyres here. However, I don't know if this is going to be good enough. I said I was about 3 or 4 tenths of a second up on George Russell, So I'm hoping that this might be good enough to see us through, but I think it's going to be quite marginal here as to whether we actually manage to make our way into the top 10 or not. I think we're going to be right on the bubble here, and we'll see if it's good enough as we round the final corner. We'll cross the line. It was a 1:28.1, and that was good enough for P11. So close, but yet so far. We are out for the second successive time in Q2, and we will not be making an appearance in Q3. And that, just to add insult to injury, we were 0.005 of a second off of Oscar Piastri, one of our closest rivals, and only 1/10 of a second behind basically all of our closest rivals. Leclerc, Perez, Norris, Piastri, all of these guys. You know, I was so close to them, but it is Sainz, Russell, Doohan, Hulkenberg and Sargent who I am going to be exiting with on this occasion. Kevin Magnussen doing a absolutely stellar job. He was all the way up in P2. However, I feel like I can already say with fairly high level of confidence, he's not going to be in P2 come the end of Q3. Somehow, I just know that's not going to happen. Somehow I know it's going to be, you know, Norris and Piastri are up there in the top 3 and Magnussen is going to be like P10 or something like that. So, yeah, that's an unfortunate reality which I probably have to come to terms with. And, yeah, hopefully we can just do everything we can from P11 on the grid to actually try and get into the points, try and minimize the damage that these guys are going to do to my championship lead. But I would say that there is a very realistic possibility that we are going to be losing the lead of the championship here. It's just going to be a question of by how many points and how realistic it seems like it's going to be to overcome the deficit to these cars in front of us. But we will see what we can do and whether we can limit that damage as we get into the Singapore Grand Prix.
The spectacular backdrop of the Singapore skyline, something of an endurance race ahead with the notorious sauna-like temperatures for the drivers. It makes it a very physical contest out there. Welcome back to Marina Bay for the Singapore Grand Prix. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Alex Albon will lead us away from pole position, and Lando Norris lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Oscar Piastri, Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen, Gasly, Magnussen, Ocon, Hauger, Robinson, Sainz, Russell, Doohan, Hulkenberg, Sargent, Joe, Fittipaldi, Liam Lawson, De Vries, Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today?
Well, the intro sequence didn't want to play here for whatever reason, so we are going to be getting straight into the race. A couple options on strategy here, and I'm actually going for the alternate strategy for a change. I had the option to start on the soft compound tyres, but I have decided that I actually think that starting on the medium tyres is going to be a better option for me to not just lose a bunch of positions, because I know what it's like to have no tyre grip around here, and it is absolutely horrible. It is one of the most horrible experiences I think I've had on this game. You know, out of every single corner, you just have absolutely no grip whatsoever, and it is just a really unpleasant experience. So, yeah, I am going to be starting on the medium compound of tyres and hoping that those will be able to go just a little bit longer, so that I will be able to hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable and maybe defend whatever position I do have. It will probably reduce the likelihood of us making too many overtakes, but we'll see what we can do as the lights come on and the lights go out. And we have had a good getaway compared to Dennis Hauger there, and we're already up at the P10. We're going to move to the inside of the corner, get nice and aggressive up the inside of a few cars there. We went off the track a little bit. Unfortunately, we didn't overtake Gasly in that moment, because otherwise we would have had to have given the position back. Dived way too aggressively up the inside, but we were allowed to keep those positions. So we've gotten ahead of both Alpines. We got ahead of Dennis Hauger and Max Verstappen, both of the Aston Martins, and also ahead of our teammate Kevin Magnussen. So we're up into 6th. Magnussen, I believe, started 8th, so he's up into P7, and actually now he's briefly up into P6. I guess Kevin Magnussen saying that he doesn't want me to overtake any more cars and win the World Championship here in Singapore, because, you know, going up the inside of me, costing me a shed load of time to Sergio Perez in front. I will probably not be sticking with him for too much longer now, you would have to say. 8-9 tenths behind him, but we'll see what we can do. But yeah, up into P6, a respectable start, and honestly, if I even finish P6, I think I'd be, you know, pretty content with that. It is Albon, I believe, out in front at the moment, leading Lando Norris from Piastri, from Leclerc, from Perez, and then it's myself, of course. So basically all of my closest title rivals, with the exception of Alex Albon, he's not really in the championship fight, but the other 4 drivers in front of me are the drivers who I would ideally like to be in front of to defend my championship lead. So it is interesting how the universe works out that way, especially considering they were all down in the bottom half of the drivers in Q2, but then I guess in Q3 the universe corrected itself, and here I am behind all of them as they occupy the top 5 positions in the race. Well, obviously not Albon, but the rest of them. So yeah, Albon leading at the moment still as we make our way towards the end of lap 2 and the beginning of lap 3, and Kevin Magnussen is going to be sizing up a move on me. Not going to fight that one too much. If he's got more pace, he's got more pace, and I think that honestly he should be entitled to try and make as much ground as he can throughout this race, score as many points for the team, because we are of course fighting a war on 2 fronts, as it were. We're fighting in the Constructors' Championship as well. I don't think we're going to win the Constructors' Championship this season. Generally, I would say that Kevin Magnussen just hasn't quite been strong enough of a driver for what I would like him to be to make that work. But, you know, it's okay. And, you know, hopefully, irrespective of Kevin Magnussen's performances this season, we can still compete for P3 in the Constructors' Championship, because that is our sponsorship target. This is Nico Hülkenberg, number 27 in the Haas, out of the race. It's over for him, and we will not be seeing him again. Yeah, disappointing for him, I'm sure, but not much you can really do when you have mechanical failures. Happens to everyone. Happened to me in Australia and Belgium so far this season. Gasly thought about going for a move there, but couldn't quite make the move happen, unfortunately. Did I say Gasly? I think I meant Verstappen. Verstappen tried going for the move there, and it couldn't quite make it work. But he's going to try and go for it again into lap 5, and this time I try to go back up the inside of him, but we're still going to be wheel to wheel through this next sequence of corners. He's going to have the outside line. I'm going to have absolutely no speed on the exit. This is a track where I think me driving with that medium traction control turned on really harms me at this high level of difficulty. You know, it harms me in a lot of places. I've come to realise that that is one of my biggest problems. So I think at some point I'm really going to have to try and bite the bullet, do the thing I'm afraid of, and try and learn to drive without traction control. It's very hard on a controller. It is doable, of course, because there are plenty of people who are quite skilled on a controller and play without traction control. And, you know, I need to... I can't make the excuse that it's like so I can focus on my commentary, because I'm pretty sure most of you know at this point that I do the commentary in post after I've actually done the racing. So, you know, I think it's important for me to just try and focus in as much as I possibly can, and, you know, try and really learn to drive without that traction control. It might take me some time in the interim. Maybe we'll use Season 5 as a sort of transitional season, where I can kind of get used to traction control and maybe make a few more mistakes and that kind of thing, because I don't want to inhibit the production of these videos too drastically if I can avoid it. But also, you know, I think it might lead to maybe some more sort of interesting scenarios as Gasly tries to go up the inside of me there. We're having a great scrap with Pierre Gasly at the moment. But yeah, I think it would lead to a few more interesting situations potentially in my actual racing, where, you know, I might have a crash that comes as a result of me getting on the power too early, or I might have a few spins or some cool saves, these kinds of things. Because at the moment I don't really have much of that, because, you know, I am playing on that medium traction control. It's quite easy to control, and yeah, as a result it makes things a little bit more sort of predictable sometimes, you would have to say. But the upside to it is that it might help me improve my pace a little bit, because I am really struggling for pace at this sort of stage. And I know that it's probably a lot to do with the difficulty I'm racing on as well, but when you factor in the fact that I have, you know, pretty solid qualifying pace. I don't want it to turn into a situation where it's like, finally I have similar race pace to the cars I want to be having similar race pace to, but now I'm blitzing qualifying, because what that's going to mean is that I just win every race. You know, I think it's a very fine line in the game between having enough pace to be able to you know, race with them effectively without making it so that your qualifying is super easy, and then, like I said, the alternative, which is making it so easy that you just absolutely blitz everything. So that's something that I would need to factor in if I'm thinking about it in the future. Obviously, you just saw Pierre Gasly overtake me there, and now we're looking at Dennis Hauger, who was at risk of overtaking me. Probably not so much anymore, you would have to say, because he is also out of the race. And that will be it for Dennis Hauger here. We will refocus our attention on the race now, stop talking about traction control and that kind of thing, and you can see that I will be losing some grip because of the tyre temperatures that were on screen for just a second there, getting up to about 113 degrees here, starting to overheat a little bit, these medium compound tyres, and as a result I lose out a position to Esteban Ocon in the Alpine as well, and we are down to P10, and soon we're going to be out of the points if we're not careful. George Russell right behind us, he is going to have that DRS. We're of course going to have the DRS on Esteban Ocon as well, and that might help us to defend from George Russell on this occasion, and actually it's going to allow us to attack Esteban Ocon a little bit. He gets squeezed to the inside of the corner, and we have the outside line which is going to move to the inside for the ensuing corner, and we are going to retake P9 on track off of Esteban Ocon, and we are in the market for 2 points once again. The cars in front significantly far ahead of us now as we come into pit at the end of lap 13. Unboxing a couple laps earlier than planned on the strategy, but if you've watched this season, if you watch pretty much any video that came out during this season, you will be acutely aware of the fact that I have basically done this in every Grand Prix. The undercut, so powerful, so useful, that I can't help myself, quite frankly. And yeah, there we go. We are boxing onto a set of hard compound tyres, and I would say that our biggest threat here now is probably going to be Jack Doohan, because he is going onto a set of medium compound tyres. He's only going to be a few seconds behind me. He was of course in that train that I was heading up behind me that involved Esteban Ocon and all those guys, so I think we're going to have really good pace on these hard compound tyres to be able to keep Doohan behind. And yeah, he might be piling some pressure on us a little bit later in the race, but hopefully we can delay that for as long as possible as we make our way onto lap 16 now. You can see a few more cars coming in, including Ocon, as Mark calls him. I'm not sure that's how his name is pronounced, but here we are. A bit of carbon fibre at turn 1 there, not sure what that one is about, but it seems like someone got wing damage. Hopefully it's somebody who was ahead of us before the pit stop phase, who now needs to pit for a second time, because that would allow us to gain a free position off of that. Unfortunately, I think the reality is a little bit different. I think it was somebody who was behind us and yet to pit, which is annoying, but it is what it is. It means that we come out in P9 after the pit stop phase is over. You can see that Gasly here has pitted, and we are right behind him, but whether we're able to get ahead of him, you know, he's on 3-lap newer tyres than us, and that might make all the difference here. You can see we're not really closing him down in the straight, despite the fact that I was using a decent chunk of the battery. Just nothing really happening on this occasion in my fight with Pierre Gasly, and yeah, that is going to be staying in P9 for the time being, and I wouldn't be surprised if Gasly now drives off into the distance a little bit. We come to the end of lap 17, beginning of lap 18. You can see Gasly has broken out of our DRS range, and Doohan is right up our backside now, 0.2 of a second. The only thing that he's going to be doing is an overtake, you would have to imagine, and we are going to be falling down to P10 in this race once again. Obviously we were only there temporarily a little while ago, but this time I have the feeling it might be a little bit more permanent. He is of course on the medium compound tyres. If he overtakes us now, maybe there's a chance they'll go off a little bit later and we'll be able to catch up with him, but there you go, Doohan is through up into P9, and I don't envision that this one will be particularly easy for us to fight back with someone who is on a superior compound of tyres in a track where my pace just feels all over the place right now. We'll have to just regroup and see what we can do a little bit later in the race, but he has pulled off a significant gap to us now, 5 seconds up the road from us, and we're in a bit of a no man's land. I say a bit of a no man's land. we're in a massive no man's land. 5 seconds to the car in front, 5 seconds to the car behind. I get the feeling this is probably where we are going to be remaining for the rest of the Grand Prix now. At least I couldn't imagine that we would be making up any more positions or losing any more positions unless Lawson can really make up a lot of space, a lot of positions. But I can't really see that happening, unfortunately, because he just doesn't quite have the pace in that Williams. He's having a great race, to be honest with you. P11 in a Williams is a really strong result when you factor in just the performance of that car and the performance index. They're one of the worst cars on the grid, if not the worst. So to see him all the way up in P11 is a really solid result, and you never know. If I'd have played my cards slightly differently in this race, perhaps he could even have been in the points. But fortunately, I've managed to at least hold on to a point scoring position. Lap 27 now, and you would have to say that the chances of Lawson catching up to us become slimmer and slimmer all the time. I think basically the only hope that we're going to have of scoring any more points than this is perhaps a late timed safety car, which might allow us to go for some moves on Gasly and Doohan and that kind of thing. But even then, I reckon we'll only make up 1 or 2 more positions. Meanwhile, my closest title rivals are still all in the top 5. I think Albon is still leading the Grand Prix, but it is Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Perez making up the rest of the top 5. And then in some order, I'm not sure which, but I definitely can see 2 green cars behind Perez. I think it's Verstappen, then Magnussen, but I could be wrong about that. It could be Magnussen in front.
Okay, mate,
yeah, Magnussen doing a decent job either in P6 or in P7. Not quite sure which one is him, but yeah, he is having a very, very solid race regardless. And hopefully that'll be good for us to sort of stay in the Constructors' Championship fight a little bit and not fall too far behind Mercedes, who are going to make up a lot of positions, or at least a lot of ground, rather, in the championship. The tyres were doing that thing that you can see that they're doing now, where they were kind of getting on the verge of overheating, but they never got so... They never got so out of range that they were starting to get like super slippery or anything like that. They were quite easy to deal with when I was on the hard compound tyres. Probably not running in the hot air of cars in front of me all the time helped as well. Albon here has won the Grand Prix, and we are going to round the final couple of corners to take P10. It's not quite the result we would have wanted. It is a difficult race, but we're still taking away 1 point from this. It wasn't a completely fruitless endeavour. And yeah, we'll see what impact that has on the Drivers' Championship. Hopefully it's not too massive, but we will see.
It's never easy to make it across the finish line here in Singapore, but they've done so with some style here today to take a remarkable victory. Natalie, fill us in. What was it that helped the team achieve their success today?
I really feel the track layout, combined with the track temperatures we saw today, suited their car. These cars come alive when the tyres are just at the right temperature, and the driver did a great job managing that as well. They just look so comfortable out there. It's like anything, it always looks so easy when it all just clicks.
So after a magnificent race, we can now see the drivers making their way to the podium. Once again, it's the Silver Arrows who take top spot. A well-earned victory for Mercedes.
Well, Alex Albon takes another victory this season, his second victory of the season. He's becoming a little bit of a king of the streets here, perhaps, a little bit like Sergio Perez, who of course was the man who replaced Albon at Red Bull all those years ago. But yeah, Albon picking up his second win with a different team this season. Obviously, he had his win in Monaco with McLaren, and now he's winning here in Singapore with Mercedes. And then we also have Norris and Piastri completing the podium.
So then, it's time to see how this result affects the Drivers' Championship. Lando Norris takes over the lead of the Drivers' Championship after that excellent result. So then, Natalie Pinkham, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
It's an interesting one today. On balance, I think I have to call out Alex Albon. A really strong drive for him today, and one that he and his team should be very proud of.
It's time to check out the Constructors' standings. McLaren continue to increase their gap at the top. There is also a strong showing from the Mercedes team today as they make their way up the standings. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who's joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
Well, in the Drivers' Championship, things are looking okay. 14 points behind Norris is definitely not a completely unrecoverable deficit. However, the situation which I am starting to wonder whether it may be a little bit too out of reach for us with only 7 races left to go is this Constructors' Championship situation, which we are now 34 points down on our nearest competitor, which I believe is still Mercedes. But McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes have all started to pull away from us a little bit. And actually Ferrari are catching us too. So we may be in a bit of jeopardy here in terms of meeting that sponsorship obligation, that 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. You know, Kevin Magnussen just hasn't been, you know, I would say on the face of things, Kevin Magnussen has been a lot more consistent this season than I have, in that he's been having, you know, just a lot of very sort of average results. You know, he finishes sort of in the lower half of the points every single time. His best results are usually sort of P6, P7, and then he'll get a few sort of P8s, P9s, P10s here and there. He's only had a few races this season where he's finished outside of the points. It's just simply that he's not having the peaks that I've been having, that I would need him to be having for us to actually compete for a Constructors' Championship. If Kevin Magnussen was finishing on the podium every now and again, I think it would be a different story. But on the face of it, I would say that me and him are having quite similar seasons in terms of overall performance. It's just that I'm having a lot higher highs and then a few lower lows, whereas Kevin Magnussen is kind of just sort of middling a lot, and that's causing him to get less points. You know, if you think about it, more than half of my points have come from race victories alone, just to give you an idea of the level of sort of consistency we're dealing with here. I don't even know if I've had that many more podiums this season apart from those victories. Obviously, I've been in the points every now and again, and we've had a few sort of sprint races where we've picked up points and stuff like that, but yeah, generally speaking, I would say I've had quite an inconsistent season where I can be very fast one race and competing for a victory, and then the very next race I will be, you know, absolutely categorically nowhere, and my pace is absolutely shocking. I just can't seem to get into the points and stay there no matter how hard I try. And we've had a few too many of those races this season, I would say, for somebody who really wants to be taken seriously as a championship contender. Because things are so tight this season, I've managed to kind of get away with it a little bit more. But I would say that if I had this kind of performance in any other season where it perhaps wasn't so hotly contested, we could be looking at a very different story. You know, we're only now just starting to get to the point of the season where people are on, you know, 200 points, and only then have 2 people actually made it there, because it's so close in the top 7 teams. People are consistently taking away points from each other. Nobody can really get on a winning streak. No team can start streaking, nothing like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these last 7 weekends play out. But that is going to be it for this video. So if you enjoyed, please make sure you like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.